Second reading today comes from the Gospel of Luke, chapter 23, verses 1 through 3. That can be found on page 88 of the New Testament of the Pew Bible if you wish to follow along. Listen again to the Word of God. Then the assembly rose as a body and brought Jesus before Pilate. They began to accuse him, saying, "We found this man perverting our nation, forbidding us to pay taxes to the emperor, and saying that he himself is the Messiah, a king." Then Pilate asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" He answered, "You say so." Friends, this is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. DTR defined the relationship. Last week we looked at the topic of family. Today we'll focus on choices. Now, tonight's game is a great example of a culmination of choices. Hire Andy Reid. Fire Andy Reid. Someone else hire Andy Reid. He fires Nick Sirianni. Eagles hire Nick Sirianni. Draft Patrick Mahomes. Trade for A.J. Brown. Trade away Tyreek Hill. Revamp an offense around Jalen Hurts. Those choices and many more have paid off to reach this year's Super Bowl. And tonight, many more choices will be made. Heads or tails. Maybe it'll be a key decision on a fourth down. We trust that Rihanna and her team will choose an outfit that will not be part of a wardrobe malfunction. Corporations will have chosen to spend on average $7 million for a 30-second commercial. Choices are everywhere, and choices can be defining. At the same time, phrases are thrown around like so-and-so is a team of destiny. And in life, we sometimes struggle accepting the roles we each play versus fate or destiny. We misapply predestination, misinterpret, however you want to say it, to mean that everything is predetermined. That is not what predestination means. Sometimes we attribute things to good luck or bad luck. Jinxes, especially in sports, even reverse jinxes. Now that's very real. But at some point, we have some ownership. It was the Roman philosopher Seneca who said, "Luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity." In William Shakespeare's Julius Caesar, Cassius says to Brutus, "Men at some time are masters of their fates. The fault, dear Brutus, is not in our stars, but in ourselves." I read of some results of a survey that are maybe a little bit dated. It's about 15 years ago. It is from a study done at the University of Illinois, but I think the results would hold up today. They found that 75% of their respondents believe in fate, but 85% believe that fate and individual initiative are intertwined in determining outcomes. The respondents were more likely to see fate in the events of the distant past. However, for more recent events, they believe choice can change the outcome. It's fascinating how people think sometimes. Now, one choice that is pretty defining is our spouses. This past week, Chelsea and I got to have lunch with another couple. We were asked to tell the story of how we met, and I don't have time to tell the whole story now. But that too was a culmination of all kinds of choices, right? Was it fate? What amount of personal responsibility did each of us have in winding up in the same place at the same time with the same mutual friends if neither of us had shown any interest, if I had not put together the perfect set list for my band that evening, or if we had never taken the initiative to start dating, would we have still gotten married because of fate? Because we were a couple of destiny? Think about the choices that maybe we made as children or in high school. Maybe some of you in school now are making these choices, right? Are you going to be known as an athlete, an artist, part of the band? Are you going to be so intelligent that the rest of us who are secretly jealous will call you a nerd or a geek, but really we just wish we were as smart as you? And as we grow up, we tend to form relationships with others who have similar interests. Maybe it's your church, a sports team, a hobby, a passion. All of those go into defining us, and labels get stuck to us. And as we go through life, there are important decisions that we must make that can carry significant consequences, positive and negative. And the Bible is full of those. We highlighted one of the most scandalous moral failures of all time last week with King David and Bathsheba, right? Adultery, murder, and attempted cover-up all had a role in shaping the future of his life, his family, and his children. But we don't have to go back that far to see those kinds of consequences. I'm not getting political, but President Clinton will always be known for an inappropriate relationship with an intern. Barry Bonds, Roger Clemens, Mark McGuire, Alex Rodriguez, and others suspected of steroid use still remain shut out from the Baseball Hall of Fame. Not advocating for them, just saying it. So through our life, as a result of our choices, labels become stuck to us. And maybe it is based on how you vote, which policies you support or oppose, which cable news network you watch. We love labeling people so that we can quickly identify who's on our side and who's the enemy. And this even happens within the church. And before we point too quickly at the United Methodists, we Presbyterians have been doing this for a long time. As you go through the Gospels, you see many people try to attach labels to Jesus. And sometimes they get it right, but it seems to me most of the projected cultural labels come from his enemies. Those who feel threatened and those who have much to lose by the status quo being upset. And Jesus does his best to let them bounce off him. What's the old rubber and glue? Bounces off me, sticks to you kind of thing. We might just label him as a nonconformist because everyone has to have a label, right? Even that's a label. Throughout the Gospels, conflicts arise because of this clash of world views, right? Jesus comes along and he's saying it's not our heritage that ultimately defines us. It's not our gender. It's not our race. It's not our socioeconomic status. It's none of the things that tie us to a past that we may or may not have any control over. We are defined not by the past, but by an incredible future made possible through the grace of God. And so we see this grace when Jesus went against the ways of the world of that day, and he healed those who were considered to be unclean, like lepers and a woman who was unable to stop bleeding, right? He went around dead people, which he didn't do, and he raised them to life. He and his disciples violated the Sabbath laws to serve and meet people's needs. He ate with tax collectors and called some of the most unlikely characters sinners to be his disciples. the fear of cultural labels did not stop Jesus from living out his worldview, from fulfilling his mission, and showing us what matters most when making choices. Now, he also showed us how to do that with tact and grace and love. So it means you don't have to be a jerk to people to do these things. So in Jesus' trial, we see several choices being made. First, since the Jews did not have the authority to carry out the death penalty, they had to bring Jesus to the Roman governor. And originally, Jesus was charged with blasphemy. Now, that's a big charge. But guess who doesn't care about a charge of blasphemy? The Romans. At least not blaspheming the Jewish God. Yeah, the Romans didn't care one bit about that. So, they make up new charges, political ones, that would get, or at least they thought, would get the Romans' attention. So, right, 3 charges can be summed up as seditious agitation, encouraging people not to pay taxes to Caesar, and assuming the title of king, all of which were untrue. And for what we remember about Pilate later on, here, he sees this for exactly what it is. N.T. Wright comments, "Why then did Pilate say that Jesus was innocent of the charges laid against him? Why did Herod noticeably not accede to the chief priest's accusations? Partly, it seems, because it was obvious that Jesus was not leading the sort of revolution normally spearheaded by would-be kings of the Jews. His few close followers were only lightly armed and had in any case run away. Jesus made no threats, offered no resistance, and said hardly anything. They could see that the main reason he was before them was because the chief priests and their associates wanted to get rid of him." And Pilate and Herod, throughout this chapter, they played this game of finding ways to pass the buck to each other. They knew the right choice, but were unwilling to follow through out of fear. Neither were ready to take responsibility. But we see at the beginning of this that Pilate's questioning comes from this cultural perspective when he asked, "Are you the king of the Jews?" And Jesus was so not interested in our earthly and cultural labels, and that's reflected in his answer. And you can say, his response of "you say so" can be said in so many ways, right? You say so. You say so. You say so. I don't know. There's all kinds of inflection and emphasis you can put on it. I wish we knew exactly how he said it. After everything Jesus had done, after everything he'd said and taught, more and more people were failing to understand who he was, and it seems completely backwards to how it should have been. It should have been so obvious. If we were to apply those ideas of things like fate and destiny and luck, Jesus' momentum should have been at a near crescendo at this point, and instead, it looks like the world was doing everything to take him out. Even when the choices of others nailed him to a cross, Jesus still had ownership of his choices. Think about it. Fully human, fully divine, with all of his abilities, all the options available to him, all the things he could have done. He chose the most gracious and actually the most powerful action of all from the cross, which was to forgive. It's what we try to teach our kids, right? You may not have control over the choices other people make, but you have complete control in how you choose how to respond. While we are defined in ways biologically, socially, these days mostly politically, we can learn a lot by seeing how Jesus refused to play that game. He showed what really matters. And I think we saw and we heard that through Katina's testimony this morning and her desire to reaffirm the promises made at her baptism for herself, right? We even heard old Katina and new Katina. Yeah, there are labels that will come and go. Some will stick forever. But as long as the labels, such as child of God, follower of Jesus, disciple, as long as those are shown and heard through your life, the cultural labels will mean less and less and less. So maybe at some point someone says, "You're this or that." You say so, right? Make the choices this week where others will see and hear what you believe, and let you be defined by your faith because of Jesus' mission, his invitation to live and make choices in response to his grace, his claim on our lives as his children. Let that define your choices. It's in the name of the Father, the Son, and Holy Spirit.